And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Happy holidays. I'm National Weather Service meteorologist Peter Chan, bringing you your Alaska marine weather here as we go into the Christmas holiday weekend. Looking at the ice, ice is extensive across the north. We've had much colder temperatures the past couple of weeks, which have allowed for more rapid ice growth, and that will continue. Further south, as we look at the ice expanding southwestward there from areas of St. Lawrence Island and Nunavik Island, and then also trying to fill in here areas of Bristol Bay, though we do have strong northeasterly winds at the present time this Friday afternoon as low pressure passes down well south of the Alaska Peninsula and then eventually up into the Gulf on Saturday. So later tonight into early Saturday morning, here's the main low, the little lobe of low pressure that kind of rides up near the Alaska Peninsula. The two down here are going to pivot up together tomorrow and then be moving across the Kenai Peninsula, upper portion of Cook Inlet as we go through Saturday night and Sunday morning. And that's the first main low pressure system here on Saturday. And this thing has a very strong occluded front. This front is going to produce storm force winds, not just in the western Gulf tonight, but then spreading along the northern northeastern Gulf to along the outer and southern coast here of the Panhandle. And there could be gusts over 50 knots as a result of the tight pressure gradient there along the coastline. Further inland, troughs of low pressure strengthening northeasterly winds along the west coast. There will be areas of snow and blowing snow as a result of moisture being forced inland from the initial lobe of low pressure that works its way northward across the mainland. So by Sunday, the low has then crossed up into and begin to go up in the interior. We expect areas of snow and blowing snow, light to occasionally moderate snow. The front along the Gulf Coast pushes inland and weakens, but there's yet two more systems. There's a 1-2 punch, a low pressure that's going to come up on Christmas Day and into Tuesday, another one that hits this area of the Panhandle, northeastern Gulf Coast with more moderate to locally heavy precipitation, mainly rain in coastal areas, and some gale force winds. I think the first system that's going to impact the Gulf here Saturday and Sunday will have storm force winds. The next one will have gale force winds. So here, look at this, extensive storm force winds south of Sitka, southeast to east winds to 50 knots along areas west of Yakutat. As you get up toward Cape Suckling, east winds to 50 knots, storm force winds, waves anywhere from 22 to as high as over 30 feet here, especially west and southwest of Sitka. Inner channels are going to see gale force winds 35 to 45 knots, some higher gusts possible, waves up to 20 feet there. Dixon Entrance, 7 feet. Stevens Passage, 6 feet there. Lynn Canal, and in the colder air, this area, the far end of the northern Panhandle, will get heavier snow, whereas the southern part will stay mainly a cold wind-driven rain. Sunday, look for southeast to south winds 25 to as high as 35 knots down toward Ketchikan and Metlakatla. But for the outer coast, winds will be southerly at 30 knots, Sitka southward to off of Craig, and then southeasterly 35-knot gales, Gustavus and off of Yakutat Bay and Cape Suckling, with waves still running around and above, just above 20 feet. For the northern and northwestern Gulf Saturday, side of Hinchinbrook Entrance, we're looking at easterly 50 to 55 knot storm force winds with waves of 18 to near 20 feet. And then winds easterly 45 knots within Prince William Sound, 12-foot waves. Look for northeasterly 35 to 40 knot gales from off of Anchor Point down toward the entrance of Cook Inlet with waves there around 10 feet. For Sunday, winds do come down. The low pressure system is working its way across the Seward Peninsula, so winds do become southerly, southeasterly here within Prince William Sound, 7-foot waves. Outside of Hinchinbrook Entrance, 30-knot southerly winds, waves 18 to near 20 feet. Look for winds to turn westerly out of the lower portion of Cook Inlet to northeast of Kodiak Island at 30 knots and waves 9 to 12 feet. For Saturday, the low pressure system here is kind of back toward my head. It's going to work its way further northwestward. So ahead of it, easterly flow, northeast to east, 20-knot winds here across Kodiak Island, waves 5 feet, 13 feet off into the nearshore waters of the Gulf, but winds turn northwesterly, increase to 45-knot gales with gusts to 60 knots through the gaps here along the middle and lower portion of the Alaska Peninsula. And on the Bering side, we expect 30 to 40 knot north to northwest winds with waves 11 to 16 feet, but certainly some very strong winds coming through the gaps across the Alaska Peninsula. Saturday, those winds will come down 30 to 35 knots, westerly winds across Kodiak Island. Those west winds, 35-knot gales up through Bristol Bay and east of Chicknick, but once you get southwest, they fall off to westerly winds to 20 knots there around Cold Bay and False Pass with waves 4 and 9 feet respectively. And then across the Aleutians, far eastern Aleutians, northwest winds 35 to 40-knot gales, but they fall off Nikolsky westward and turn back around to the west, 15 to 20 knots or so, Atka through Adak. And waves generally running 7 to 11 feet here in the central eastern Aleutians, 8 to 10 feet on the North Pacific side. And then across the eastern and central Aleutians on Sunday, southwest winds 15 to 20 knots, maybe a bit higher, 25 knots south of Atka. And then finally, once you get west of Adak, the winds turn more northwesterly, 20 to 30 knots, and waves generally in the 9 to 12-foot range. Saturday, strongest winds there across Bristol Bay and Kuskokwim Bay. Look for northwesterly 35 to 40 knot gales. Winds not quite as strong, 20 knots northeast there towards St. Matthew, St. Paul. And then across the ice along the lower Yukon Delta and up through Norton Sound, winds will be out of the northwest at 25 knots with the ice there in place. And for Sunday, expect northwest winds to 25 knots, Norton Sound, and out along the ice between St. Lawrence Island and the lower Yukon coastline. And then still 35-knot westerly winds within Bristol Bay with 6-foot waves. And further out, look for winds around 15 knots from the north at St. Paul. Across the Bering Strait, lower Chukchi Sea, winds will be northerly 25 to 30 knots with the ice there in place. Further up along the Arctic coast, winds will be easterly, picking up to 25 knots around New Exit, Prudhoe Bay, eastward through Kaktovik. But those winds are going to pick up on Sunday as low pressure kind of pushes inland across the mainland. It's going to tighten the pressure gradients along the coast. So we expect easterly winds of 30 to 35 knot gales here along the central eastern Arctic coast, especially through Kaktovik. And then as we drop down through the lower Chukchi Sea and the Bering Strait, 30 to 35 knot gales out of the north and northwest with the ice. So those kind of winds there could still be shifting around, so keep that in mind just for safety reasons. But otherwise, definitely an active weather pattern for much of the state as we go through the holiday weekend.